Long before old age became something people expected to reach, the human body was built around a quieter bargain. Muscle was never just strength. It was heat, balance, movement, survival, and the ability to rise from the ground when the world was still cold, uneven, and unforgiving. Yet the same body that once protected humans through hunger, distance, and danger slowly begins to give some of that power back to time. Is aging simply taking muscle away? Or is something older being revealed inside the design of the human body? Why muscles fade with age? Before anyone had a word for muscle, before anyone could draw the body and name its hidden layers, strength was felt in simple ways. It was the ability to rise from sleep on hard ground when the morning air was cold. It was the ability to carry a child, lift a branch, steady the body on loose stone, or keep walking when the place of food was not close. For early humans, muscle was not something separate from life. It was woven into almost every movement that allowed a person to remain with the group, cross an open plain, gather what could be eaten, and return before darkness changed the world again. A body without enough usable strength did not only move more slowly, it became more exposed to distance, weather, injury, and hunger. This is why the fading of muscle with age feels deeper than a change in appearance. It touches an older memory inside the human body, a memory from a time when movement was not optional. Long before cities, chairs, soft beds, and smooth floors, the human body had to negotiate with the ground each day. The ground was uneven. The air could be cold, food could be scattered, water could be far. A person had to bend, squat, reach, climb, pull, push, and carry, not as an exercise routine, but as ordinary life. Muscle helped hold the skeleton upright against gravity. It helped the hands grip, the legs absorb shock, and the trunk keep balance when the feet met stones, roots, mud, slopes, or sand. Even rest depended on strength, because getting down to the ground and rising again were not small acts in a world without furniture. The beginning of the human story was not written only in the brain, or only in tools, or only around fire. It was also written in thighs, shoulders, backs, hips, and hands that answered the demands of a difficult landscape. Muscle was one of the quiet technologies of the body. It did not need to be invented, yet it had to be maintained. It did not leave artifacts like stone flakes or hearths, yet without it, many artifacts could never have been made, carried, used, or passed on. When we imagine ancient humans, it is easy to picture dramatic moments. A hunt, a storm, a predator at the edge of darkness. But much of survival was probably less dramatic and more repetitive. Step after step, load after load, small corrections of balance, a hand placed against a rock, a shoulder taking weight, a back tightening for a moment and then releasing. These quiet actions shape the body across deep time. They remind us that human strength was not only explosive force, it was endurance, posture, coordination, warmth, and the ability to keep going through ordinary strain. 12. Muscle also carried heat. It gave the body mass that could help resist cold, and activity itself produced warmth when the environment offered little comfort. Around the first camps, before permanent houses softened the seasons, a moving body was a warmer body. A person who could gather wood, shift stones, carry food, or keep close to others was using muscle not just to act on the world, but to remain inside the conditions of life. This does not mean ancient people were invincible, or that aging spared them. It means the human body began in a setting where muscle was constantly asked to prove its usefulness. That is what makes the later fading of muscle so strange. The body once depended on it for standing, carrying, warmth, balance, protection, belonging, and human life itself. Yet over time, the same body slowly lets some of that strength become thinner, quieter, less immediate. The question is not only why power declines. The deeper question is why a living system that once needed muscle so completely does not preserve it unchanged. For the whole length of life, if muscle once stood so close to survival, then its fading with age seems almost like a contradiction. The body depends on it to rise, walk, balance, carry, breathe deeply, protect the joints, warm itself through movement, and remain steady when the ground does not forgive a mistake. A young body can make these acts feel ordinary, It can stand without thinking, climb without planning, recover from strain and return to movement, as if the body were a tool that will always answer. But age slowly changes the conversation. The same movement that once felt automatic may begin to ask for attention. A step becomes more deliberate. A load feels heavier than it looks. The ground seems less predictable. Rising from a low place becomes a small negotiation between legs, hips, back, hands, and breath. The question becomes quiet, but powerful. If muscle was so deeply woven into the beginning of human life, why does the human body allow it to fade at all? The answer cannot be treated as a simple failure, because the body is not a machine built to keep every feature at its highest level forever. It is a living system, shaped by time, energy, repair, risk, and the long pressures of reproduction and survival. In the deep past, natural selection did not design human beings around endless youth. It favored bodies that could grow, learn, move, reproduce, protect the young, cooperate, and pass knowledge forward in a world where danger often arrived before old age had much time to unfold. This does not mean older people had no place in ancient groups. Elders could hold memory, skill, roots, seasons, stories, and practical knowledge. But the body itself was never freed from the cost of being alive. Every tissue had to be repaired. Every signal had to be renewed. Every muscle fiber had to be maintained by food, blood flow, nerves, hormones, and daily use. A muscle is not a stone kept in storage. It is more like a fire that must be continually fed, not only with energy, but with reason. If the body senses less demand, less loading, less movement, or less urgent need, it may not preserve the same amount of muscle with the same force. That is not a moral lesson. It is a biological pattern. The body often allocates resources according to use, injury, inflammation, nutrition, rest, and age-related changes in repair. Across a lifetime, these small changes gather slowly. They do not need to arrive as a disaster. They can arrive as quiet subtraction, a little less power in the legs, a little less grip in the hands, a little more caution before stepping down, a little more time needed after effort. This is where the ancient human story returns. For early humans, muscle was constantly tested by the environment. The world asked the body to carry, walk, brace, pull, squat, and balance so often that strength was built into the rhythm of ordinary life. Modern life often removes many of those small demands, while age adds its own slower changes beneath the skin. The result is not simply that muscle disappears. It is that the old relationship between body and world becomes thinner. The body hears fewer ancient signals, while time makes maintenance more difficult. So the fading of muscle is not one mystery with one clean answer. It is the meeting point of biology, environment, movement, energy, and deep history. It shows that strength was never a permanent possession. It was always something negotiated between the living body and the conditions around it. That slow truth makes the loss feel less sudden, but not less meaningful. And when age begins to loosen that negotiation, we see the human body not as broken, but as finite, carrying the marks of a species that survived by movement, yet was never promised that movement would remain unchanged forever. The human body did not evolve in a world where strength was separated from ordinary life. It did not grow muscles for display, and it did not maintain them because they looked complete. Muscle was built into use. It responded to weight, distance, posture, and repetition. For most of human history, the body met the world directly through walking, lifting, carrying, squatting, climbing, digging, reaching, and holding. These movements were not special events. They were the texture of daily survival. A person did not need to set aside a time to use the body, because the body was already being asked for effort by the ground, by food, by weather, by tools, by children, and by the need to keep moving with others. In that older setting, muscle was not something stored away inside the limbs. It was constantly being called into the present moment. The legs learned from distance. The feet learned from uneven soil. The hips learned from lowering the body close to the earth. The back learned from loads that could not be placed on a table or wheeled across a floor. The shoulders learned from carrying what the hands could not hold alone. Even the small muscles that steady the body were trained by a world that rarely gave perfect flatness. This matters because muscle is not preserved by memory alone. The body does not keep every capacity simply because it was once useful to ancestors. It listens to what is being asked now. When muscles are regularly used against resistance, they receive signals that they are still needed. When those signals become weaker, less frequent, or less varied, the body may begin to maintain less. This is not a sudden decision. It is not a punishment. It is a slow biological economy. Living tissue costs energy. Muscle asks for blood supply, nerve connection, protein turnover, repair after strain, and coordination with the rest of the body. In a young body, these processes can feel almost invisible. The body builds, repairs, and adapts with little conscious thought. But across age, the same signals may not produce the same response. The world may ask less of the body, and the body may answer less strongly when it is asked. The beginning of the human story helps make this clearer. Early humans and their ancestors lived with a level of movement that modern people often underestimate. Their bodies were not moving because movement was healthy in an abstract way. They were moving because life required contact with real places. A shelter had to be reached. Fuel had to be collected. Food had to be found, prepared, shared, or carried. Infants had to be held. Tools had to be transported. Social life itself happened through movement across space. A body that moved often received constant reminders to keep the muscles awake. It was not a perfect protection against aging, injury, or weakness. Ancient bodies also wore down, but the ordinary environment gave the body fewer chances to forget what strength was for. Modern life changes that relationship. Smooth floors reduce small corrections of balance. Chairs remove the need to lower and raise the body many times from the ground. Vehicles shorten distances. Machines carry weight. Soft living spaces protect the joints, but they also quiet many of the signals that once passed through bone, tendon, and muscle every day. Then age adds its own slower changes. Reduced repair, altered nerve signals, shifting hormones, illness, pain, caution, and the natural loss of reserve that comes with time. The fading of muscle begins to look less like a single event, and more like a long conversation growing quieter. The body was built for use, but use itself has changed. And when the ancient demands of walking, lifting, balancing, and carrying no longer surround the body in the same way, muscle may slowly retreat from the level it once held as ordinary life. Muscle is not kept by the body as a silent treasure. It is kept through signals. Every time a person stands from the ground, walks uphill, steadies the body on an uneven path, carries weight in the hands, or lowers the hips close to the earth, the muscles receive a quiet message that they still matter. This message is not poetic. It is physical. Load passes through the feet, tendons pull, nerves fire. Blood moves toward working tissue. Small tears and strains call for repair. Balance muscles wake before a fall can happen. The body reads use as information, and over a lifetime, that information helps decide what should be preserved, what should be strengthened, and what can slowly be allowed to fade. In the world where human bodies first took shape, these signals were everywhere. A person did not have to search for them. The land supplied them. A slope asked the calves and thighs to work. A riverbank asked the hips and feet to adjust. A sleeping place on the ground asked the legs, back and hands to bring the body down and lift it back up again. Wood, stone, food, skins, containers, tools, and infants gave weight to the arms and shoulders. Even standing still in a rough landscape was not the same as standing on a flat floor. The body made constant small corrections. These corrections were so ordinary that no one would have needed to name them, yet they helped keep the body in contact with the ancient reasons muscle existed. This is one reason aging muscle cannot be understood only by looking inside the muscle itself. The body is always listening to its surroundings. If the surroundings ask for movement, the body receives one kind of signal. If the surroundings remove movement, the body receives another. Modern comfort often protects people from strain, and that protection has real value. But it also changes the language that reaches the muscles. A chair tells the hips and legs they do not need to travel all the way to the ground. A vehicle tells the legs that distance can be crossed without many steps. A smooth room tells the feet that balance will rarely be surprised. A machine tells the shoulders that heavy loads no longer need to be lifted. None of these things are bad in themselves. They are part of how humans have made life safer and less exhausting. Yet the old body inside modern life is still built to respond to use. When use becomes narrower, muscle may receive fewer reasons to remain broad in its abilities. Age makes this quieter signal more important. Younger bodies often keep reserve even when life becomes easier. They can recover quickly, recruit muscle strongly, and rebuild after strain. Older bodies may not answer as quickly. The same walk may ask more effort. The same load may leave longer fatigue. The same period of rest may cause more loss than it once did. This happens because muscle is connected to many aging systems: nerves, hormones, blood vessels, appetite, sleep, inflammation, and the repair of proteins inside the cells. No single cause explains every person. The pattern is widely recognized, but the exact pace differs from body to body. What matters for this story is that muscle depends on repeated invitations from life. Early humans lived inside a world that sent those invitations again and again. They moved not to improve themselves, but because food, warmth, tools, shelter, children, and safety demanded motion. Their bodies were shaped by a daily grammar of effort. When age reduces the body's ability to answer, and modern life reduces the number of questions being asked, muscle can fade in two directions at once. From within the aging body, and from outside, in a world that no longer requires the same range of movement. The slow loss of muscle is therefore not only a private biological event, it is also a change in the conversation between an ancient body and a modern environment. The fading of muscle with age can look, from the outside, like something simply being lost. The arm becomes thinner, the legs feel less certain. A hand that once closed firmly around a tool, a branch, a rail, or another person's hand may begin to feel less immediate in its grip. But inside the body, loss is often more complicated than disappearance. Muscle is not only reduced by time, it is also shaped by what the body believes is still required. A living body does not keep all tissue at the same level without reason. It maintains what is used, repairs what is challenged, and often quiets what is no longer called upon. This is one slow truth behind aging muscle. The body may not be abandoning strength all at once. It may be receiving fewer messages from the world that strength is still needed in the old ways. In early human life, those messages were constant. The day itself was a field of signals. To reach food, legs had to travel. To prepare a place to sleep, the body had to bend and carry. To stay warm, people needed fuel, shelter, closeness, and movement. To move with a group, the body had to keep pace across ground that was never designed for comfort. The world pressed reason into muscles through distance, weight, cold, balance, and repetition. Even small actions mattered. A person rising from the ground many times in a day was sending a different message to the legs than a person rising from a chair. A person walking over stones and slopes was sending a different message to the feet and hips than a person moving across a flat room. A person carrying objects close to the body was reminding the arms, back, and trunk that strength was part of ordinary life. None of these movements had to be heroic. Their power came from being repeated over years. Aging changes the way these signals are received. The same body that once answered effort quickly may begin to answer more slowly. Muscles may become less responsive to the signals that normally build or preserve tissue. Nerves may recruit muscle fibers with less precision. Recovery may take longer. Appetite, sleep, illness, pain, and inflammation can all influence how much material the body has available for repair. This is why muscle fading with age cannot be reduced to laziness or willpower. It belongs to a larger biological landscape. Yet the environment still matters. If an older body is surrounded by a world that asks for very little movement, fewer signals reach a system that already needs stronger reasons to maintain itself. The ancient body and the aging body begin to drift apart. One was shaped by a life of frequent demand. The other may live in a room where many demands have been removed. Comfort has allowed many people to survive injuries, illness, winter, hunger, and old age in ways that would have been far harder in the past. But comfort also changes what the body practices each day. A protected life may preserve safety while quietly narrowing movement. Over time, The muscles may become less like a tool used daily and more like a tool kept carefully in a drawer. It is still there, but it is no longer receiving the same reminders of its purpose. Early humans were not strong because they were trying to be strong. They were strong enough when they were strong enough, because life kept asking them to move. When age arrives and the questions from life become softer, the body may slowly lower the answer. Muscle fades not only because time passes through the tissue, but because the conversation between muscle and world becomes quieter. The strange part is that the body still carries the old design. It still waits for signals of ground, weight, posture, balance, and need. But in later life, those signals may come less often, and the answer may come with less force. This is where the mystery deepens. The body remembers an ancient world of use, yet it ages in a world that often asks it to use less. Muscle may look solid from the outside, but inside the body it is always being renewed. It is not like a stone kept in one shape after it has been formed. It is living tissue, and living tissue has a cost. Every fibre must be supplied with blood. Every contraction depends on signals from nerves. Every strain leaves tiny damage that has to be repaired. Every repair asks for amino acids, energy, oxygen, hormones, rest, and time. Numb. Even when a person is not lifting anything heavy, muscle is still helping the body sit upright, breathe, hold the head, stabilize the spine, and keep the bones from drifting out of alignment under gravity. This quiet labor never fully stops. The body pays for it every day. That is why keeping muscle through life is not simply a matter of owning strength. It is a matter of continuously funding strength. In the ancient human world, this cost was accepted because the return was immediate. A body with usable muscle could travel farther, gather more fuel, carry food, lift a sleeping child, steady itself after a stumble, and create warmth through movement. Muscle helped convert food into action. But food itself was never guaranteed. For most of human existence, energy came from landscapes that changed with season, weather, migration, drought, injury, and chance. The body could not behave as if every tissue deserved unlimited support. It had to divide resources among many needs: movement, immunity, wound healing, reproduction, brain function, digestion, and the daily repair of cells. Muscle was essential, but it was also expensive. This is one of the colder truths hidden behind the aging body. What feels to us like loss may also reflect an old biological economy. The body must decide, again and again, how much it can maintain. This decision is not conscious. It is not a plan. It is not a statement about worth. It is the result of countless chemical signals, stresses, shortages, recoveries, and adaptations. In youth, the system often has more reserve. Food can be turned into growth. Damage can be repaired quickly. Signals from movement can lead to stronger tissue, but with age, repair becomes slower and less complete. The muscles may respond less strongly to the same signals that once kept them full and ready. Nerve connections may become less efficient. Inflammation may linger longer. Illness or inactivity may take more from the body than it once did. A few quiet days can leave a deeper mark than they would have left decades before. This does not mean the body has stopped caring about movement. It means the price of maintaining the same level of muscle has changed. The beginning of the human story gives this price a wider meaning. Early humans did not live in a world where the body could freely choose comfort and abundance. Their muscles were maintained inside a cycle of demand and scarcity. A long walk might help find food, but the walk itself used energy. Carrying fuel might bring warmth, but carrying also spent strength. Holding a child close protected life, but it tired the arms, back, and hips. Muscle solved problems while creating costs of its own. The body had to be strong enough to survive, but not so wasteful that it consumed energy without need. Aging reveals this balance, with a slow and honest clarity. When the body no longer receives the same demands, and when repair is no longer as generous, muscle can become one of the places where the body reduces its spending. The fading is not random. It follows the logic of a living system that was never built for endless surplus. Muscle remains precious, but precious things are not always preserved unchanged. They must be fed, used, repaired, signaled, and defended against time. As age advances, the body may still remember the ancient need for strength, yet the cost of keeping that strength begins to rise. The cost of muscle becomes clearer when it is placed inside the older problem of energy. A body can only build and maintain itself from what the world provides. Food becomes fuel, tissue, warmth, repair, movement, and thought. Nothing inside the body is free. Even when the body feels quiet, the heart must keep moving blood. Mund, the brain must keep its signals alive. The immune system must watch for danger. Skin must close over wounds. Bones must remodel under pressure. Muscles must be repaired after use and protected from wasting when they are still needed. In a world of constant abundance, it is easy to imagine that the body could simply keep everything strong forever. But the human body was not shaped in a world of endless supply. It came from landscapes where food could be seasonal, scattered, difficult to gather, or uncertain after injury, drought, cold, or migration. Under those conditions, the body learned to balance strength against other demands. Muscle was valuable because it helped a person move through the world, but muscle also required material to keep alive. It asked for protein, calories, circulation, nerve input, and recovery. If the body had to choose between repairing a wound, fighting infection, feeding the brain, supporting reproduction, or maintaining tissue that was not being used as often, the balance could shift. This does not mean the body makes a simple decision like a person choosing where to spend money. It means the body is full of signals that rise and fall depending on stress, food, movement, illness, age, and need. Across a lifetime, those signals slowly change. In youth, the body often has a wide margin. It can build muscle while also healing, growing, learning, and recovering. With age, the margin narrows. Repair becomes less generous. The same food may not support the same rebuilding. The same movement may not send as strong a signal. The same illness or period of rest may take more muscle than it once would have. This is one reason muscle fading with age feels unfair, but it is not biologically strange. It follows the older logic of a body that must keep many systems alive at the same time. The beginning of the human story makes this balance easier to understand. Early humans did not live as pure athletes, constantly fed and carefully rested. They lived as vulnerable bodies moving through changing environments. A long search for food could strengthen the legs, but it could also empty the body of energy. Carrying wood could help create warmth at night, but it also demanded effort from the shoulders, arms, and back. Walking with a group could protect a person from isolation, but it required joints, muscles, lungs, and attention to keep working together. Muscle was not separate from hunger, weather, fear, sleep, and injury. It existed among them. To preserve muscle, the body needed enough use to justify it, and enough resources to repair it. When both were present, strength could be maintained. When either one weakened, the balance became more fragile. Aging brings that fragility closer to the surface. An older body may still need strength, but it may also need more time to heal, more effort to recover, and more protection from strain. The immune system may demand resources. Chronic pain may reduce movement. A fall, a sickness, or a quiet period can interrupt the signals that once kept muscle active. In this sense, muscle fades not because the body forgets its importance, but because importance alone is not enough. The body must be able to pay for it. This is the cold trade beneath the skin. The same muscle that once helped humans survive hunger and distance is also one of the tissues most sensitive to the body's changing supply of energy, repair, and use. Age does not remove that history. It reveals how costly strength has always been. Old age reveals a cold truth that youth can hide. The body does not keep every system at its highest level, simply because that level once mattered. It keeps negotiating. It measures demand, damage, food, recovery, risk, and time in ways no conscious mind can fully hear. Muscle is one of the places where this negotiation becomes visible. In younger years, strength can feel like a natural possession, as if the body has placed power in the limbs and left it there. But muscle is never left alone. It has to be rebuilt from meal to meal, repaired after strain, connected to nerves, supplied by blood, and reminded by movement that it still has work to do. When age lengthens behind a person, the body may begin to protect survival in quieter ways. It may favor caution over force, repair over expansion, conservation over abundance. The result can feel like betrayal, but it belongs to a deeper biological pattern. A living body is not designed to preserve all forms of power equally forever. In the ancient world, this truth would have been felt through ordinary limits. A person who had lived many seasons carried knowledge, memory, roots, skills, and judgment, but the body still carried the marks of use. Knees remembered distance, hands remembered tools, backs remembered loads, feet remembered cold ground and uneven paths. The human body was never outside wear. It survived by adapting to strain, but adaptation itself left traces. Muscle could grow stronger when it was used, yet the same use could also bring fatigue, injury, and later stiffness. The body was always balancing benefit against cost. Strength helped a person move through the world, but strength was not protected from time. This is why it is misleading to imagine early humans as endlessly powerful figures who simply remained strong until life ended. The evidence we have from old bones often shows effort, healing, damage, and adaptation together. Human bodies were capable, but they were also vulnerable. Age did not arrive as an idea. It arrived as slower rising, shorter steps, guarded movement, and the need to depend more on others. That dependence was not failure. It was part of being a social species. Muscle fading may have changed what an older body could do, but it did not erase the value of memory, teaching, watching, preparing, choosing, and guiding. The body's loss of force may have been balanced, in some groups and moments, by the mind's accumulation of lived experience. Still, the biological fact remained. The body did not keep muscle untouched. It could not simply freeze a younger state and carry it unchanged through every year. The cells inside muscle are always turning over. Proteins are broken down and rebuilt. Nerve signals are maintained or weakened. Blood vessels nourish tissue or fail to nourish it as well as before. Inflammation, illness, injury, less movement, and lower repair capacity can all shift the balance toward loss. None of this needs to be dramatic to be real. Aging often works by accumulation. A little less use, a little less response, a little less repair, a little more caution, and slowly the body becomes different from the one it remembers. This returns us to the first human problem. Survival was never about keeping one quality at its maximum. It was about keeping the whole living system going. Muscle was essential, but so were the brain, the immune system, the heart, the gut, the skin, the bones, and the ability to remain within a group. When time made every repair more costly, the body could not give every tissue the same priority it had in youth. Muscle fading with age is therefore not just a decline in strength. It is a visible sign of the body's old compromise with life itself. The body once used muscle to meet the world, but it was never promised that this meeting would remain equally powerful forever. Age often reaches muscle through movement before it is noticed as loss. A person may not first see it in the mirror or measure it in the arm. It may appear in the way the body chooses a step, the way it rises from a chair, the way it hesitates before bending, or the way it searches for balance when the ground is not perfectly still. The movement becomes smaller before the muscle looks smaller. The body begins to avoid certain angles, certain loads, certain low places, certain quick changes of direction. A young body often moves as if the world will answer kindly. An older body may move as if the world must be checked first. That caution is not foolish. It is part of the aging body's attempt to protect itself. But protection has a cost. When movements become narrower, the muscles that once answered wide demands receive fewer chances to stay awake. The legs may still walk, but they may walk shorter distances. The hips may still bend, but not as deeply. The back may still support the body, but with less rotation, less lifting, less willingness to carry awkward weight. The hands may still grip, but less often against rough surfaces, less often with full force. Slowly, the body begins to live inside a smaller map of movement. In the ancient human world, that map was much larger. To move through open land, forest edges, riverbanks, rocky slopes, snow, mud, dry grass, or uneven paths, the body could not rely on one repeated pattern. Every surface asked for a slightly different answer. A foot landing on a stone asked the ankle to adjust. A slope asks the calves and thighs to work together. A low fire, a tool on the ground, a sleeping place, or a gathered bundle asks the body to squat, kneel, reach, twist and rise. These actions were not dramatic, but they gave muscle variety. They reminded the body that strength was not one thing. It was many small abilities held together: balance, range, timing, coordination, and force. When aging begins to reduce movement, it often reduces this variety first. A person may still move every day, but the movements may become flatter, safer, and more repeated. The body begins to keep the patterns it uses and let go of the patterns it does not. This is why muscle fading with age is not only about the amount of muscle tissue. It is also about the loss of practiced movement. A muscle that is rarely asked to work through its full range may become weaker in the ranges it no longer visits. A leg that rarely rises from the ground may forget some of the strength needed for low positions. A trunk that rarely turns under load may become less prepared for twisting. A foot that always meets smooth floors may lose some of the constant conversation it once had with rough earth. This does not mean modern life is wrong. It means the body's ancient design still listens to use with great seriousness. Age changes how movement feels, and changed movement then changes muscle. The relationship goes in both directions. Less strength may cause less movement, and less movement may deepen the loss of strength. Over many years, this circle can become quiet enough that no single day seems responsible. A person simply notices that the body no longer trusts the same step, the same bend, the same lift, or the same distance. The fading of muscle begins not as a sudden disappearance, but as a gradual shrinking of the body's daily conversation with the world. Muscle does not usually vanish like something cut away in a single moment. It often fades through the small movements that stop happening. A person may still walk, still stand, still carry light objects, still move through the day, and yet the body may no longer meet the full range of work it once knew. The change can be so quiet that it hides inside ordinary choices. The body chooses the higher seat instead of the low ground. It uses the railing instead of the legs alone. It avoids the uneven path. It carries less in each hand. It turns the whole body instead of twisting through the trunk. It takes the shorter route. None of these choices are foolish. Many of them are sensible responses to pain, tiredness, injury, fear of falling, or the simple awareness that recovery is slower than it used to be. But muscle listens to patterns, not intentions. If a movement is avoided often enough, the body receives fewer signals to keep the strength for that movement alive. The loss is not only in the size of the muscle, it is in the disappearing habit of using it. A thigh that rarely lowers the body close to the earth may keep enough strength for walking, yet lose some of the deeper strength needed to rise from a low place. A back that rarely carries uneven weight may still hold posture, yet become less prepared for awkward force. A shoulder that rarely reaches, pulls, lifts, or supports may become narrower in what it can safely do. The body preserves the roads it travels most, and lets the unused roads become overgrown. In the older human world, those roads were travelled constantly. The ground itself gave no perfect routine. One day might require walking farther than expected. Another might require carrying fuel, dragging branches, lifting stones, scraping hide, gathering food, holding a child, or shifting shelter materials before weather changed. The body did not repeat one clean movement in one clean space. It learned many small answers to many small problems. This variety mattered. Muscles worked with tendons, joints, nerves, balance, breath, and attention. Strength was not separate from coordination. A leg was not merely strong, it knew how to step. A hand was not merely powerful, it knew how to grip different surfaces. A back was not merely a column, it knew how to brace, bend, rotate, and recover. When age reduces movement, it may first reduce that old variety, and then the muscle follows. Modern life can make this narrowing easier. Floors are flat. Seats are raised. Loads are lighter or moved by machines. Distance is crossed while sitting. Food arrives without travel across rough land. Water comes without carrying. Warmth comes without gathering fuel. These comforts have protected human beings from many dangers, and they are not mistakes. but they mean the ancient body receives fewer daily messages from the world that formed it. With age, this matters more. Older muscle may need clearer, more repeated signals to maintain itself, while life often sends softer ones. The body may still be moving, but moving within a smaller circle. Over time, the circle can become the new normal. What once felt like caution becomes habit. What becomes habit becomes biology. A movement not practiced becomes a movement the body trusts less, and a movement the body trusts less is avoided again. This is one quiet path by which muscle fades with age. It is not always a dramatic collapse of tissue. It can be a slow forgetting between the body and the world. The muscles remember an ancient life of bending, carrying, rising, bracing, walking and balancing, but the days may no longer ask for those abilities often enough to keep them fully awake. Modern people often separate movement from life. There is work, and then there is exercise. There is travel, and then there is walking for the body's sake. There is rest, and then there is recovery. This separation is so familiar that it can feel natural, but it is quite new in the long story of human beings. For early humans, movement was not a scheduled activity placed inside an otherwise still day. It was the day. To look for food was to walk. To make warmth was to gather fuel. To sleep safely was to choose a place, clear a space, carry materials, lower the body to the ground, and rise again when light returned. To care for children was to lift, hold, carry, crouch, follow, and return. To live with others was to move with them across a landscape that did not arrange itself for comfort. The body did not need a separate reason to use muscle, because life itself kept asking for it. This is important for understanding age. When people say that ancient humans were active, the point is not that they were deliberately training themselves. They were not preserving muscle as a project in the modern sense. Their environment made many kinds of motion unavoidable. The muscles of the legs were reminded by distance. The muscles of the trunk were reminded by carrying and balance. The hands and forearms were reminded by gripping tools, wood, stone, plant fibers, food, skins, and the bodies of children. The hips were reminded by the ground. The feet were reminded by rough surfaces. Every ordinary task sent a message into the body. This ability is still needed. Over years, these messages help maintain a broad kind of strength. Not just the kind that lifts a heavy object once, but the kind that lets a person repeat small efforts without thinking about them. Aging changes this because older bodies often begin to lose not only force, but frequency of use. A movement that disappears from the day no longer sends its message. A range of motion not visited becomes less familiar. A position not entered becomes less trusted. A load not carried becomes more surprising. The body may still move, but it may no longer move through the full landscape of its old design. In a deep historical sense, the aging body becomes quieter because the world around it has become quieter. The ancient ground once spoke through slopes, distance, weight, cold, uneven footing, and the need to keep up with others. Modern surroundings often speak in softer tones. A chair, a vehicle, a smooth floor, a warm room, a handle, a button, a delivered object. These are achievements of human culture, and they have saved effort, reduced danger, and allowed many people to live longer and with less pain. Yet they also mean that muscle receives fewer of the ancient signals that once arrived without being planned. This does not mean a person should romanticize the past. Ancient movement came with injury, exhaustion, exposure, and risk. But it does show why the human body can seem mismatched with the comfort it has created. The muscles are still part of an organism shaped by use. They still depend on repeated contact with gravity, ground, load, posture, and balance. When age makes repair slower, and daily life removes many ordinary demands, fading becomes easier to understand. It is not merely that time takes muscle away. It is that time changes the body's ability to answer, while culture changes the number and strength of the questions being asked. The first humans did not carry muscle as decoration. They carried it as a living answer to a world that required motion. In later life, that answer may grow softer, not because the body has forgotten its origins completely, but because the old conditions that once kept the answer loud are no longer always present. A muscle does not move, because it has strength alone. It moves because a signal reaches it. Before a hand closes, before a foot catches the ground, before the thigh lifts the body from a low place, the nervous system has already begun its quiet work. The brain forms an intention, the spinal cord helps organize it, and nerves carry electrical messages outward toward the muscle fibers. What looks like a simple movement is really a conversation between command and response. When that conversation is clear, the body feels direct. A person wants to stand, and the legs rise. A person reaches for a branch, and the shoulder, arm, hand, and fingers join in order. A person stumbles, and small muscles react before thought has time to name the danger. Muscle depends on this invisible timing. Without it, strength becomes less useful, even when some of the tissue remains. This is why the fading of muscle with age cannot be understood only by looking at the flesh. The older body may lose size, but it may also lose precision. Some nerve signals may travel less quickly. Some motor units, the small teams of nerve and muscle fibers, may become less numerous or less finely controlled. The body may still want to move, but the message may arrive with less force, less coordination, or less certainty than before. These changes usually happen slowly, and they differ from person to person. They are not signs that the body has failed in a single moment. They are signs that the system connecting thought to action is aging along with the muscle itself. In the beginning of the human story, this connection was essential. Early humans did not survive by strength alone. They survived by coordinated strength. A heavy arm without timing would not shape a tool well. Strong legs without balance would not cross broken ground safely. Powerful hands without sensation would not grip stone, wood, skin, plant fibers, or food with the right amount of pressure. The nervous system allowed muscle to become intelligent movement. It allowed the body to adjust to slopes, loose soil, darkness, cold, fatigue, and the movement of other people nearby. The human body was never only a frame with engines attached. It was a sensing, correcting, learning organism. Age touches that organism at many levels. Reflexes may become slower. Balance may feel less trustworthy. The feet may give the brain less clear information from the ground. The eyes, inner ear, joints and muscles may not agree as quickly as they once did. A movement that once happened in one smooth act may begin to require attention. The older person may look down before stepping, pause before turning, or reach for support before rising. These choices are reasonable. They protect the body from falls and injury, but they also show that muscle fading is tied to confidence in the signal system. If the nervous system cannot call on strength quickly, the body may begin to use less strength, and what is used less is easier to lose. This creates a quiet circle. Less reliable signaling can reduce movement. Less movement can reduce the signals that preserve muscle. Less muscle can make the nervous system more cautious. The circle may turn for years without any dramatic event. In a world of ancient ground, such changes would have had immediate meaning. A slower reaction on a slope, a weaker correction after a slip, or a less certain grip could change how far a person travelled or what work they could safely do. Around early fires, along rough paths, beside water, or beneath shelter made from simple materials, survival depended on the body answering quickly enough. The body's fading strength was therefore never only a matter of muscle. It was also the fading of speed, timing, sensation, and trust between the mind and the moving body. Age can also change the way strength is gathered. A young person may call on force quickly, almost without noticing the steps between wanting and doing. The chair is low, and the legs rise. The stone is heavy, and the hands tighten. The body slips, and muscles around the ankle, hip, and trunk answer before the mind has finished understanding the fall. In later life, the same body may still contain will, memory, and effort, but the gathering of force can become slower and less complete. The muscle may be present, yet the call reaching it may not bring every fibre into action with the same clarity. This is one of the quiet reasons aging strength feels different from simple tiredness. The body is not only asking how much muscle remains, it is asking how well that muscle can be summoned. Inside each movement, the nervous system organizes many small units. A single nerve cell can speak to a group of muscle fibers, and together they form a working team. When more teams are recruited, movement becomes stronger. When the teams fire in a well-timed order, movement becomes smooth. With age, some of these connections may become less efficient. Some fibers may no longer receive the same steady command. Some fast responses may weaken. The body may rely more on slower, safer patterns. The result is not always obvious from the outside. A person may still walk, still lift, still use the hands, but the movement may carry a small delay, a smaller reserve, or a lower ceiling of force. This matters deeply because human strength began as coordinated action in a difficult world. Early humans needed more than large muscles. They needed muscles that could answer in time. A foot had to adjust to rough ground. Fingers had to change pressure around a tool or a gathered object. The back had to brace when weight shifted unexpectedly. The legs had to slow the body on a slope and push it forward again. These actions were not performed by muscle alone. They were produced by sensation, timing, prediction, and correction. The nervous system was constantly reading the world and asking the muscles to respond. Aging can make this reading less sharp. The ground may feel less certain. The body may take longer to organize itself before a turn. A grip may not rise to full force as quickly. Balance may ask for the eyes, the feet, and the hands to help more often. None of this means that an older body has no strength. It means strength becomes less automatic. It may require more attention, more preparation, and more caution. Caution itself then changes movement. The body that no longer trusts a quick step may choose fewer quick steps. The body that fears an awkward lift may stop practicing awkward lifts. The body that feels uncertain on uneven ground may seek smoother ground. These choices protect the person, but they also reduce the nervous system's daily practice in calling muscle into action. The ancient origin of this problem is clear. Human bodies were shaped in places where hesitation could matter, but so could wisdom. A younger body might respond faster. An older body might know a safer route, a better season, a remembered shelter, or the danger of careless effort. Muscle fading with age therefore sits between force and judgment. The body may lose some speed in gathering strength, while the human life around that body may gain experience in using less force more carefully. The fading is still real. It changes grip, stride, balance, and confidence. But it is not only weakness in the muscle, it is the slow aging of the command, the response, and the trust between them. The fading of muscle with age is often imagined as something happening in the arms, legs, back, or hands. The tissue becomes smaller, the force becomes lower, the body feels less ready. But the deeper change is not only in the muscle itself. It is also in the road between intention and movement. A person may decide to stand, reach, turn, grip, or step, yet the body must translate that decision into many hidden events. The brain must send a clear signal. The spinal cord must help organize the pattern. Nerves must carry the message outward. Muscle fibers must respond in the right order and with the right force. Sensation must return from the feet, joints, skin, and inner ear to tell the body whether the movement is safe. Strength is born inside this loop. When the loop is fast and trusted, movement feels simple. When the loop grows slower, less certain, or less complete, strength can feel as if it has moved farther away from the self. This is one reason an older person may say the body no longer obeys in the same way. The will may still be present. The memory of strength may still be present. But the path from wanting to doing has become more fragile. In early human life, that path had to be alive every day. A person crossing uneven ground was not only using leg muscle. The nervous system was reading the slope, adjusting the ankle, tightening the trunk, shifting the arms, and preparing for the next step. A person carrying wood, stone, food, or a child was not only using the shoulders. The brain and nerves were judging weight, balance, grip, breath, and fatigue. A person rising from the ground near a fire was not only using the thighs. The whole body was arranging itself against gravity, cold, and the need to move without falling. Human strength began as this complete system. Muscle, nerve, balance, sensation, attention, and environment working together. Age can soften any of these connections. The feet may speak less clearly to the brain. The muscles may react more slowly to a sudden shift. The hands may not judge pressure with the same confidence. The legs may still have force, but less quickness in applying it. The trunk may still support the body, but with less automatic correction. These small changes can make movement feel less certain, and uncertainty often leads to caution. Caution is protective, especially in later life, because a fall or injury can carry a heavier cost than it once did. Yet caution can also reduce the chances for the nervous system to practice strong, varied movement. The body avoids the rough path, then becomes less prepared for rough paths. It avoids the low seat, then becomes less prepared to rise from low places. It avoids the heavy load, then becomes more surprised by weight. This is not a weakness of character. It is the aging of a living loop. The less the road is travelled, the quieter the road becomes. The ancient origin of the human body makes this especially meaningful. Our ancestors did not survive by muscle tissue alone, and they did not survive by thought alone. They survived because thought could become movement quickly enough to matter. A remembered water source had to be reached by legs. A stone tool had to be shaped by hands. A child had to be carried by arms and hips. A shelter had to be built by backs, shoulders, fingers, and balance. The mind and the muscles were never separate worlds. They were joined by signalling, practice, and repeated contact with the earth. When muscles fade with age, we are seeing a weakening of that old bridge. The body may still know what it wants to do, but the bridge between command and action may no longer carry the same traffic. Strength becomes slower, more careful, and sometimes less available at the exact moment it is needed. This is why aging muscle feels so personal. It changes not only how much force the body can make, but how confidently a person can enter the world through movement. The fading is in the tissue, but also in the message, the timing, the sensation, and the trust. Muscle does not live alone inside the body. It is tied to bone, stretched through tendons, guided by joints, steadied by balance, and organized by posture. When a leg lifts the body, the muscle is not acting as a separate rope pulling an empty space. It is pulling on bone, through a tendon, across a joint, while the spine, hips, feet, eyes, and inner ear all help the movement stay safe. This is why the fading of muscle with age is never only a story of shrinking tissue. It is a story of the whole moving body changing its agreement with gravity. A thigh may lose force, but the knee also changes how it tolerates pressure. A hip may stiffen, and the back may begin to guard itself. A tendon may become less elastic. A foot may feel less certain on the ground. Then the muscles around those places begin to behave differently. They may tighten to protect, relax to avoid pain, or stop entering positions that no longer feel trustworthy. Over time, the body can become not simply weaker, but more cautious in its architecture. In the ancient human world, this whole system mattered at every step. Early humans moved through places that asked the skeleton and muscles to cooperate constantly. The ground might slope, shift, soften, crack, or rise. A person carrying wood or food had to let the spine brace while the legs adjusted beneath it. A person squatting near a fire or a tool had to fold at the ankles, knees, hips, and back, then rise again through the same chain. A person stepping across stones near water needed not only leg strength, but joint range, tendon spring, balance, and fast correction. Muscle was part of the answer, but the answer was never only muscle. The body survived because many structures shared the burden. Age changes that sharing. If a joint becomes painful, the muscles around it may be used less. If a tendon becomes less forgiving, movement may become shorter. If balance feels uncertain, the body may widen its stance, slow its steps, and avoid uneven ground. If the back has learned to expect discomfort, the legs and hips may take on different work, or the person may avoid bending altogether. These adjustments are understandable. They protect the body from damage. But they also change the signals that reach muscle. A protected joint may move through a smaller range. A guarded back may reduce the work of the trunk. A cautious step may ask less from the muscles that, once corrected, balance quickly. The body begins to preserve safety by narrowing movement, and the narrowing itself can deepen the fading of muscle. This returns to the beginning of human movement. Our ancestors were not held upright by muscle alone, or by bone alone, or by balance alone. They lived through a moving partnership. Bone gave shape, muscle gave force, tendons transferred that force, joints allowed direction, nerves organized timing, Balance prevented disaster. Posture made effort possible over distance. When age touches one member of that partnership, the others must respond. A weaker muscle can make a joint feel less supported. A stiff joint can make a muscle work less fully. Poorer balance can reduce confidence, and reduced confidence can reduce movement. Nothing changes in isolation. The fading of muscle with age is therefore also the fading of a larger harmony. The body may still be capable, but it begins to move as if each action must pass through more negotiations. Standing, turning, bending, carrying, and stepping become shared decisions among tissues that have all been marked by time. Muscle fades partly because the whole structure around it is aging, and the whole structure ages partly through the ways muscle is no longer used as before. What appears as weakness in one place is often the quieter adjustment of an entire human frame learning how to move with less certainty. An aging body often becomes careful before it becomes openly weak. It may slow the turn of the head, shorten the step, keep one hand near a wall, or choose a path that feels safer under the feet. These choices can look small, but they are part of a deep protective intelligence. As the years pass, the cost of falling, twisting, tearing, or healing badly becomes heavier. A young body can often recover from a stumble with surprise and laughter. An older body may carry the same stumble for weeks, months, or longer, so the body begins to protect itself before danger arrives. It moves with more warning, it tests the ground, it avoids sudden force, it chooses stability over speed. This caution is not the enemy of the body. In many cases, it is the body trying to keep itself alive. But caution also changes the work asked of muscle. When the body avoids force, the muscles receive fewer chances to produce force. When the body avoids low positions, the legs and hips receive fewer chances to rise from them. When the body avoids uneven ground, the small muscles of the feet, ankles, and trunk receive fewer chances to correct balance. Safety narrows the field of movement, and the narrowed field slowly changes the body that lives inside it. In the earliest human landscapes, caution also existed. Our ancestors were not reckless bodies throwing themselves against the world. A broken bone, a torn tendon, a deep wound, or a fall far from help could become a serious threat. Older members of a group may have relied more on judgment, memory, and careful movement than on speed. They may have known where the ground was safer, where water could be reached, when weather was turning, or which task should not be rushed. Human survival was never only youthful force. It was also the ability to choose when not to spend force. Yet the environment still required movement. Even caution had to move through distance, weight, cold, and rough terrain. The careful body still had to stand, walk, bend, carry, watch, and respond. Modern comfort changes that balance. It allows caution to become almost complete avoidance. A person can avoid the ground by using chairs, avoid distance by riding, avoid carrying by using machines, avoid cold by remaining indoors, avoid uneven surfaces by staying on flat floors. These protections are real human achievements, and they have allowed many people to live longer with less danger. But the old body inside this protected world still listens to use. If life removes too much demand, the muscles no longer hear the same reasons to remain ready. Age then makes the loss more visible. A cautious step can become a weaker step. A weaker step can make the body more cautious. A smaller range of motion can become a smaller reserve of strength. A smaller reserve can make ordinary movements feel risky. The circle is quiet, and because it is quiet, it can be mistaken for inevitable decline alone. But it is more layered than that. Muscle fades with age partly because the body is protecting itself from harm, and protection often reduces exposure to the very movements that keep strength available. The ancient human body was shaped in a world where safety and movement had to coexist. It could not remove all strain and still remain alive. It had to spend energy carefully, but it still had to spend it. In later life, the modern body may have more protection than any ancestor could imagine, yet the muscles still carry the old rule: what is not used becomes less defended. This is why aging strength often feels like a negotiation between fear and need. The body wants to avoid injury, but it also needs enough movement to remain capable. It wants to be safe, but safety without motion can slowly make the moving body smaller. Muscle fades with age, partly because the whole body begins to protect itself differently. A younger body often spends force freely. It can turn quickly, step down without planning, carry weight in an awkward position, or recover from a stumble before the mind has time to become afraid. Later in life, the body often becomes more careful. It is not only the muscle that has changed. The joints, tendons, bones, nerves, balance, vision, pain signals, and memory of past injury all begin to shape movement. The body learns caution. It begins to ask whether a step is safe before taking it fully. It may choose a slower path, a higher seat, a lighter load, or a more stable surface. These choices protect the person, and protection matters, but the body also pays a price for moving through a smaller world. When a movement is avoided, the muscles that once supported that movement receive fewer messages that they are still needed. Over time, the legs may lose some of the confidence needed for rising from low places. The hips may lose some of their old range. The trunk may no longer brace against twisting weight. The feet and ankles may become less practiced at correcting small surprises from the ground. What looks like simple weakness is often the result of many protective adjustments gathering together. In early human life, protection could not mean stillness. A body had to be careful, but it still had to move. The ground could be dangerous, but food, water, warmth, shelter, and other people were not always close. A person might choose the safer slope, the firmer path, the better season, or the slower pace, but the body still had to answer the land. Muscle worked with bones and balance because life did not remove difficulty. It only asked the body to manage difficulty with judgment. This is an important difference. Modern life can protect the body by removing many demands altogether. A person can avoid the low ground, avoid carrying weight, avoid cold air, avoid rough paths, and avoid long distance. These changes are not failures. They are part of the reason many people now survive longer than most ancestors could expect. But the body inside this comfort is still ancient in its logic. It still keeps muscle through use, sensation, pressure, and repeated contact with the world. If protection becomes too complete, the muscles may slowly become less prepared for the very acts that protection has replaced. Aging then deepens the effect. Repair is slower, reaction is less sharp, confidence becomes more fragile. The body begins to save itself from risk by choosing less strain. But less strain can make later strain feel even more dangerous. A quiet circle forms. The body avoids because it feels weaker, and it feels weaker because it has avoided. This circle does not happen in one day. It may pass through years of small decisions that seem sensible at the time: a shorter walk, a lighter bag, a chair with arms, a hand on the wall, a path without stones. Each choice can be reasonable, yet together, they reshape the body's daily conversation with gravity. The fading of muscle with age is therefore not only a decline in tissue, it is also a change in how the body judges the world. In youth, the body may treat the world as a place to enter. In age, it may treat the world as a place to negotiate. That negotiation can preserve life, but it can also narrow the body's practice of strength. The ancient human frame was shaped by a balance between danger and movement. It was never meant to be careless, and it was never meant to be still. When muscle fades, we are seeing that balance tilt. The body protects itself more carefully, but the cost of that protection may be a slower, quieter loss of the movements that once kept strength alive. Bones remain after muscle is gone, and this simple fact creates one of the great silences in the human story. Archaeology can show us stone tools, hearths, shelters, burials, cut marks, worn joints, healed fractures, and the shapes of bones that carried bodies through hard landscapes. But it cannot bring back the exact strength of a thigh, the firmness of a grip, the fatigue in a shoulder, or the slow fading of muscle across the final years of a life. Muscle is soft. It does not usually wait for us in the ground. It disappears, and with it disappears much of the daily effort that once filled a body. What remains is indirect evidence. A bone may show where tendons pulled strongly over many years. A joint may show wear from repeated movement. A healed break may suggest survival after injury. Teeth, tools, and settlement traces may suggest the kinds of work people performed. But none of these traces can fully tell us how an aging person felt when rising from the ground, carrying fuel, walking with the group, or gripping a tool at the end of a long day. This matters because it keeps the story honest. We should not imagine ancient people as permanently strong simply because their lives demanded movement. We should also not imagine them as weak in the same way modern stillness can make bodies weak. The truth is more careful. Ancient bodies were shaped by use, but they were also marked by use. The same movement that maintained muscle could also strain joints, damage tissue, and leave scars in bone. A life of walking, carrying, bending, and working with the hands could build durable strength, but it could also bring pain, injury, and uneven wear. The beginning of the human story was not a perfect training ground. It was a living world where the body paid for what it did. A person who survived many seasons may have carried deep practical knowledge, but the body carrying that knowledge was still made of tissue that aged, repaired imperfectly, and responded to hunger, cold, illness, and fatigue. Archaeology reminds us of this by showing bodies that were capable and vulnerable at the same time. A skeleton may reveal powerful attachment marks where muscles once pulled on bone, yet it may also reveal arthritis, old injuries, infection, or other signs of stress. The evidence rarely gives one clean message. It speaks in fragments. It says that people moved. It says they worked. It says they healed. It says they suffered. It says they adapted. But it does not say that muscle remained untouched by time. This is why the fading of muscle with age must be approached with humility. We can understand the broad biological process because living humans show that muscle mass, strength, nerve control, recovery, and movement often change with age. We can understand the broad historical setting because early human life required far more direct physical engagement with the environment than much of modern life does. But when we look backward into deep time, we must not invent details that the evidence cannot carry. We cannot know the exact pace at which an older hunter, gatherer, toolmaker, grandparent, or traveller lost strength. We cannot know every private limitation behind a healed bone or a worn joint. We can only see that the human body was always negotiating between demand and damage. The ancient world asked for muscle constantly, yet it did not protect muscle from age. It may have kept bodies in motion, but motion itself was not a guarantee of endless power. This silence in the evidence is valuable. It prevents the past from becoming a fantasy. It lets us see muscle not as a heroic possession, but as a living tissue that once worked inside real bodies, under real limits, in real landscapes. When those bodies aged, their strength did not vanish into myth. It faded into traces too soft to survive, leaving bones to whisper only part of the story. It is tempting to imagine ancient humans as stronger in a simple, almost perfect way. Because they walked farther, carried more, slept closer to the ground, and lived without the soft protection of modern rooms, it can seem as if their bodies must have remained powerful until the final days of life. But the evidence and the biology do not support that kind of easy picture. A hard life can build strength, yet it can also spend strength. The same ground that trains the feet can injure the ankle. The same carrying that strengthens the back can wear the spine. The same repeated squatting, kneeling, gripping and lifting that keeps muscles active can also strain joints, tear tissue, and leave pain behind. The ancient world did not offer a clean division between useful movement and damaging movement. It offered movement mixed with risk. If a person lived long enough, the body would have carried both the benefits and the costs. This is important because muscle fading with age should not be explained by saying that modern people are weak and ancient people were strong. That is too narrow. Human bodies have always been capable and fragile at the same time. A person in deep history might have had powerful legs from years of walking, but those legs could still become stiff, injured, tired, or less responsive with age. Hands shaped by tools and carrying might have developed great skill, yet the fingers and wrists could still ache, swell, or lose some force. A back used to lifting and bending might be strong, but not untouched. Bones found by archaeologists sometimes show healed fractures, worn joints, infections, and traces of repeated stress. These signs do not let us see the muscle directly, but they remind us that life placed pressure on the whole body. The origin of the human body was not a paradise of perfect movement. It was a long adaptation to difficulty. Early humans survived because they could use the body well enough, often enough, and together with others, but using the body well enough did not mean using it without consequence. A person who reached older age may have moved with knowledge gained from many seasons, but the body holding that knowledge could still have been shaped by old injuries, hunger, illness, cold, childbirth, falls, or years of labour. Strength and damage could live in the same skeleton. This is why archaeology must be read gently. A strong-looking bone does not prove an easy body. A worn joint does not prove a useless body. A healed injury does not tell us whether a person returned to full movement or lived afterward with caution. The traces are real, but they are incomplete. They show that ancient people endured. They do not show that endurance erased aging. In fact, endurance may have been one reason older bodies mattered. A person who had lived through many hardships might have carried memory about routes, seasons, animals, plants, weather, tools, and danger. The fading of muscle could have changed what that person did each day, but it did not necessarily remove their place among others. Human survival has never depended only on the strongest body in isolation. It has depended on shared labour, care, memory, and adaptation. So when we ask why muscles fade with age, the ancient past gives a careful answer. It does not tell us that old bodies were always stronger before modern life. It tells us that the body has always paid for survival. Muscle was maintained by use, but use came with wear. Movement preserved capacity, but movement also left marks. Age gathered those marks slowly, turning strength into caution, speed into judgment, and force into a more measured way of living. This older view is quieter than a myth of lost greatness, but it is more honest. It allows us to see the aging body not as a fallen version of a perfect past, but as a human body carrying the cost of having survived. Archaeology teaches a careful kind of humility. It does not give us the full living body. It gives us what the body left behind. A skeleton can show where muscle once pulled strongly on bone. It can show worn joints, healed breaks, tooth wear, signs of repeated labour, and sometimes the marks of disease or injury. But it cannot let us hear the breath of an older person rising slowly from the ground, or feel the hesitation before carrying something heavy, or know exactly when strength began to fade. The evidence is powerful because it is real, yet limited because so much of the living body was soft and temporary. Muscle, fatigue, pain, confidence, balance, and fear of falling rarely survive in the earth. They disappear, leaving only clues around the edges. This is why the ancient story of muscle must stay between two extremes. We should not imagine early humans as weak bodies helpless before the world. The evidence of tools, travel, carrying, food processing, shelter making, and long survival in difficult environments shows that human bodies were capable. But we should not imagine them as untouched bodies either. The same bones that suggest use may also show wear. The same skeleton that speaks of endurance may also speak of injury. The same life that trained muscle also consumed it. In the beginning of human life, strength and damage were not opposites. They often grew from the same daily acts. Walking across uneven ground could preserve leg strength, but it could also stress the feet, knees, and hips. Carrying fuel, food, stone, or children could keep the trunk and arms engaged, but it could also burden the spine and shoulders. Squatting, kneeling, scraping, lifting, and pulling could maintain useful movement, but repetition over many years could leave traces of strain. The human body survived by entering these demands, not by escaping them. Age made the balance more delicate. An older person might still know how to move well, but the body might have less reserve when something went wrong. A healed fracture might show that care, time, and social support allowed survival after injury. A worn joint might show years of use, but not whether the person felt pain every morning. A strong muscle attachment on bone might suggest repeated force, but not whether that force remained in old age. The past never gives us every answer. It gives us a pattern. The body was both durable and vulnerable. That pattern matters for the question of why muscles fade with age. Muscle is not a heroic substance standing outside the rest of life. It is part of a body that must face gravity, food shortage, weather, infection, childbirth, injury, sleep, fear, and time. Archaeological traces remind us that even in a more physically demanding world, the body did not escape biological cost. If anything, the cost was written into the bones more plainly. Human strength was real, but it was always paid for by tissue. It was renewed by movement, but threatened by overuse. It was supported by food but limited by scarcity. It was protected by the group but exposed to accident. In this sense, the fading of muscle is not separate from the rest of human history. It belongs to the same long compromise that shaped our species from the beginning. The body became capable enough to cross landscapes, make tools, carry children, gather fuel, and live with others, but it did not become immune to its own use. Over time, the evidence left in bone shows not a simple story of lost greatness, but a quieter truth. Human bodies have always lived between power and wear. Age does not create that balance from nothing. It slowly reveals it. Long life changes what the body is allowed to reveal. When a human life is short, many slow processes remain unfinished, hidden behind more urgent dangers. Infection may arrive first. A fall may arrive first. Hunger, childbirth, violence, cold or accident may interrupt the body before its quieter declines become the main story. But when a person lives beyond those earlier dangers, time begins to show what was always possible inside the body. Muscle fading is one of these delayed truths. It does not need to appear as sudden weakness. It can arrive as a gradual reduction of force, speed, steadiness, and confidence. The legs still carry the body, but with less reserve. The hands still hold, but with less certainty. The trunk still supports posture, but the effort becomes more noticeable. Balance still works, but it asks for more attention. Longer life gives these small changes enough years to gather into a visible pattern. This is why the fading of muscle can seem more present in modern life, even though its biological roots are ancient. The human body was never built from material that could remain unchanged forever. Muscle proteins are broken down and rebuilt. Nerve signals are maintained, strengthened, or lost. Blood vessels nourish tissue, but not always with the same efficiency. Repair continues, but it may become slower. Periods of illness or rest may take more strength than they once did. Each of these changes can be small, and each can vary from person to person. But over long time, small changes become a landscape. The body that once carried strength as a quiet reserve may begin to carry vulnerability in the same quiet way. The beginning of the human story helps explain why this can feel so strange. Early human life was often organized around immediate demands. The body needed to reach food, carry fuel, lift children, make tools, follow others, and respond to weather or danger in the present. Strength mattered because the day asked for it. But the body's design did not guarantee that the same level of strength would be preserved across all later decades. Natural selection did not create a perfect vessel for endless maintenance. It shaped a body capable of surviving, reproducing, learning, cooperating, and often caring for others, while still remaining subject to wear. In a harsher world, many people may not have lived long enough for the slow loss of muscle to dominate the final shape of life. In a longer life, the slow loss becomes easier to see, easier to measure, and harder to ignore. Balance offers a clear example. A slight reduction in reaction speed may not matter much at first. A small loss of leg power may not change the day immediately. A little less sensation from the feet may go unnoticed on a flat floor. But across years, these small reductions can begin to join. The body becomes more careful, and careful movement often becomes narrower movement. Narrower movement gives muscles fewer chances to practice. Fewer chances to practice can deepen the loss of strength and confidence. The long life that protects a person from early death also gives this circle time to turn. This is not a reason to fear aging, and it is not a claim that every body follows one path. It is a way of seeing muscle loss as part of a larger historical shift. Humans have become better at surviving into the years where slow biology becomes visible. The same species that once depended on muscle to cross rough ground now often lives long enough to watch muscle become quieter. That quietness is not separate from human achievement. It is, in a sense, one of its shadows. Longer life does not create the cost of maintaining the body. It simply gives the cost more time to speak. Muscle fading with age can seem like a new problem because modern life lets us watch it for a long time. The change can be named, measured, studied, and felt across many years, but the process itself is not new. It belongs to the older biology of a body that has always needed repair, movement, food, nerve signals, and time. What is newer is the length of life in which the change can unfold. A person may now survive childhood infections, injuries, childbirth risks, winter, hunger, and many accidents that once could have ended life earlier. Because more people live longer, the slow decline of muscle becomes more visible. It moves out of the hidden background of biology and into ordinary daily life. The careful step, the heavier bag, the slower rise from a chair, the need to rest longer after effort. This can make aging muscle feel like a failure of the present, but it is better understood as an old process revealed by extended survival. The human body was shaped across deep time in environments where muscle was needed immediately. Early humans needed strength to walk, carry, balance, gather, hold children, prepare shelters, use tools, and stay warm through movement. The body answered these demands because the demands were close and repeated. But a body shaped for survival through the next season is not the same as a body guaranteed to preserve every reserve unchanged for every later decade. Natural selection did not build human tissue to remain forever at the level of youth. It shaped systems that could grow, adapt, reproduce, cooperate, recover, and continue long enough to pass life and knowledge forward. After that, the body still had value, but its cells still faced the ordinary costs of being alive. Muscle fibers still had to rebuild their proteins. Nerves still had to keep their connections clear. Blood still had to nourish tissue. The whole body still had to decide, through signals rather than thought, where energy and repair could go. Longer life gives those decisions more years to accumulate. A small loss after illness may not matter much once. A small reduction in movement may not matter for 1 week. A little slower recovery may not change one season, but across many years, these small changes can join together. The fading of muscle is not always a dramatic collapse. It is often a record of many quiet adjustments: less walking after pain, less bending after stiffness, less lifting after caution, less confidence after a stumble, less rebuilding after sickness, less signal from a world made smoother and safer. The ancient body inside modern life still carries the old rule that muscle is maintained through use and repaired through available resources. But modern life can protect the body from demand at the same time that age makes demand harder to answer. That is why the decline can feel strangely doubled. It comes from within, through slower repair and changing signals, and from without, through a world that often asks the body to do less of what once kept it awake. This does not mean the past was better, or that ancient people aged without weakness. It means the same biological pattern is now stretched across longer time. The human species has become better at keeping people alive into years, where the body's hidden costs become clearer. In that way, muscle loss is not only a sign of decline, it is also a sign that the body has continued long enough for deep maintenance to become visible. The strength that once carried humans across rough ground does not disappear because it was meaningless. It fades because living tissue is costly, because time changes repair, and because long life lets the oldest trade of the body speak more slowly. Modern comfort has changed the kind of messages the body receives each day. A human being can now wake on a raised bed, stand on a flat floor, sit in a chair, ride across distance, receive food without walking far, stay warm without gathering fuel, and move through rooms where almost every surface has been made smooth, predictable, and safe. These changes are not small. They are among the great achievements of human culture. They protect the body from cold, hunger, danger, infection, injury, and exhaustion. They allow older people to live with more safety than many ancestors could have imagined. But comfort also changes the language spoken to muscle. The ancient body was shaped in a world where movement arrived through necessity. The legs heard distance. The hips heard the ground. The shoulders heard carried weight. The back heard bending, rising, lifting, and bracing. The feet heard stone, mud, slope, root, sand, and cold earth. In modern life, many of those voices become softer. A chair tells the legs they do not need to lower the body all the way down. A car tells the feet that distance no longer requires thousands of steps. A warm room tells the muscles they do not need to produce as much heat through motion. A machine tells the arms and back that weight can be moved without being carried. None of this means comfort is wrong. It means comfort can remove the very pressures that once kept muscle constantly informed of its purpose. This becomes especially important with age. Younger bodies often carry reserve. They can lose some movement and still feel capable. They can rest and recover more easily. They can return to strength after a quiet period with less effort. But an older body may not rebuild as quickly after the same pause. A few days of illness, a season of sitting, an injury, or a cautious change in routine can leave a larger mark than it once did. If the world around the body asks for little movement, the aging muscles may receive fewer signals at the exact time when they need those signals most clearly. This is not because the body has become foolish. It is because muscle is living tissue that responds to demand. The beginning of the human story makes the contrast sharper. Early humans did not need to invent reasons to move. Life supplied them. Food might require walking, digging, reaching, climbing, carrying, or sharing. Warmth might require fuel, shelter materials, and closeness with others. Rest might require lowering the body to the ground and rising again. Tools might require gripping, striking, scraping, lifting, and carrying across distance. The day itself gave muscle 1,000 small reminders. Modern comfort removes many of those reminders, and aging reduces the body's ability to ignore their absence. The result can be a quiet narrowing of capacity. The body still moves, but less widely. It still stands, but from higher places. It still walks, but over smoother ground. It still carries, but lighter loads and shorter distances. Over time, muscles may begin to match the smaller world they are asked to serve. This does not make modern life a mistake. It only shows the deep mismatch between an ancient biological system and a protected environment created very recently in human history. Muscle fades with age, partly because time changes the tissue from within, but also because comfort changes the signals from without. The body is still carrying old expectations. It still listens for weight, ground, distance, cold, posture, and effort. When those signals become rare, strength may not disappear all at once. It may simply grow quieter, like a language spoken less often, until the body remembers fewer of its words. The modern body lives with an ancient inheritance. Under the skin, the muscles still respond to load, stretch, balance, distance, hunger, cold, fatigue, and repeated use in ways that reach far back into human beginnings. The body does not know, in any deep biological sense, that a chair is a recent invention, that a car has replaced miles of walking, or that warmth can now come from walls and machines instead of movement, fire, clothing, and closeness. It only receives signals. It feels whether the legs have carried weight. It feels whether the hips have lowered the body. It feels whether the hands have gripped, whether the back has braced, whether the feet have adjusted to uneven ground, whether the heart and lungs have supported effort for more than a few moments. The body is ancient in the language it understands, but modern life often speaks to it in a much softer voice. This is one of the quiet reasons muscle can fade with age. The problem is not only that the body grows older, it is that an older body may spend its later years in an environment that asks less and less of the very system aging is already making more fragile. Early humans lived in places where the body was constantly reminded of its purpose. The reminder might come from a slope, a cold night, a bundle of wood, a child held against the chest, a stone tool carried across distance, or the need to rise from the ground again and again. These were not separate exercises. They were messages from the world. They told the muscles that strength, balance, grip, warmth, and endurance still mattered. A person could not remove all these messages and still live in the same way. Modern life has removed many of them, often for good reasons. It has reduced suffering. It has made old age safer. It has allowed tired bodies to rest, injured bodies to heal, and weaker bodies to remain protected within community and shelter. But the muscles still follow an older rule. What is not asked for often becomes less defended. With age, that rule becomes more visible. A younger body may ignore missing signals for a while. It may keep strength in reserve even in a quiet environment. An older body may not have the same margin. If the legs are rarely asked to rise from low places, the strength for that action may fade. If the trunk is rarely asked to carry uneven weight, its old bracing ability may grow less confident. If the feet meet only flat floors, the muscles of balance receive fewer small surprises. If distance is crossed mostly while sitting, the legs may lose some of the steady endurance that once formed the base of human life. None of these changes means the body has become useless. It means the body is adapting to the world it is actually given. This is what makes the situation so strange. Humans used intelligence to soften the world, but the body was shaped by a world that was not soft. Humans built shelter, raised beds, chairs, roads, wheels, tools, machines, and systems of care, but the muscles still carry the memory of ground, weight, weather, and effort. The mismatch is not dramatic enough to notice in one day. It appears slowly, when a movement once taken for granted begins to feel distant. The stairs ask more, the floor seems lower, the bag becomes heavier, the balance feels less certain. James, the body is not only aging, it is aging inside a world that no longer repeats many of the ancient questions that once kept it ready. This is not a call to reject comfort, and it is not a simple lesson about modern weakness. Comfort is part of human survival too. It protects life, especially in age, but it also shows that the body's old design cannot be separated from the conditions around it. Muscle fades with age partly because time changes tissue from within, and partly because the modern world changes the conversation from without. The body still waits for ancient signals, but the room has grown quiet. The fading of muscle with age is often described as if the body is simply losing something it once owned. But the body does not treat muscle like a possession locked away for later. It treats muscle more like an answer to a question. If the world asks for force, balance, posture, carrying, walking, rising, gripping, and warmth through movement, the body hears that question. If the question is repeated often enough, the answer is defended more strongly. If the question grows quiet, the answer can slowly become quieter too. This is not a rule of character or willpower. It is a historical and biological way of understanding the body. Muscle needs the body to receive signals that it is still necessary. In the beginning of human life, those signals came from almost everywhere. The ground asked for balance, hunger asked for travel, cold asked for fuel, shelter, closeness, and movement. Children asked to be lifted and carried. Tools asked for grip and control. Rest asked the body to lower itself to the earth and rise again. Distance asked the legs to keep working after the mind had grown tired. The ancient world did not ask politely. It placed need into the muscles through ordinary living. A person did not have to decide that the thighs, hips, back, shoulders, feet, and hands should remain ready. The day kept reminding them. Modern life can interrupt that reminder. It protects the body by making many movements unnecessary. A person may still feel busy, tired, and mentally strained, but the muscles may not be receiving the same kind of demand. The body can spend hours thinking, watching, speaking, planning, worrying, and working without being asked to carry weight, cross rough ground, squat low, climb, brace, or walk through changing terrain. This creates a strange separation. The mind may feel exhausted while the muscles have heard very little. In later life, this separation matters more. Aging muscle may require clearer signals to remain strong, yet the modern environment often sends fewer signals. A warm room removes cold pressure. A soft chair removes the need to rise from the ground. A car removes distance. A smooth floor removes constant balance correction. A handle, button, wheel, or machine removes weight from the hands and back. These inventions are part of human intelligence, and they have reduced suffering. But they also make the body less certain that old forms of strength are still needed. The result is not immediate collapse, it is gradual adjustment. The body adapts to what life repeatedly asks. If life asks mostly for sitting, standing from raised surfaces, walking short distances, and moving through controlled spaces, the muscles may adapt to that smaller world. When a larger demand appears, the body may feel surprised by it. The ancient design has not disappeared, but it has not been called upon often enough. This is why muscle fading with age belongs to both biology and history. Biology explains the changing tissue, slower repair, altered nerve signals, less reserve after illness, and reduced response to the same stimulus. History explains the changing environment. Fewer daily burdens, fewer rough surfaces, less cold exposure, less carrying, less rising from the ground, and more protection from physical necessity. Neither side alone is complete. The body ages from within, but it also ages in a world that tells it what kind of body it needs to remain. The quiet lesson is not that comfort is bad. Comfort is one reason people live long enough to notice these changes. The lesson is that muscle is a living reply to need. When need becomes hidden by comfort, age may reveal how deeply strength depended on the old conversation between the human body and the world. The body does not preserve muscle only because the past once required it. It preserves what the present continues to ask for, and as the present grows softer, the ancient answer may slowly fade. Muscle fading with age reminds us of something the modern mind often resists. The human body was never designed to stand outside time. It can repair, adapt, strengthen, learn, and recover, but it cannot keep every layer of itself unchanged forever. The body is not a sealed object. It is a living process. Every day, it rebuilds parts of itself while other parts wear, respond, weaken, heal, or become less responsive. Muscle makes this truth easy to feel because muscle is so close to movement. When it is strong, the world feels more open. A floor is simply a floor. A staircase is simply a staircase. A bag is simply something to carry. Distance is something the body crosses without asking many questions. But when muscle begins to fade, the world becomes more noticeable. The floor seems lower. The stairs become a small negotiation. Weight becomes more honest in the hand. Distance becomes a conversation between intention and capacity. The body has not only lost force, it has become more aware of time passing through tissue. In deep human history, this awareness would not have been abstract. A body that could no longer rise quickly, walk far, carry fuel, or keep balance on rough ground would have felt time through daily limits. Yet this did not mean the person had become meaningless. Human beings were never only muscle. The same species that needed strength to move through landscapes also survived through memory, cooperation, skill, attention, care, and shared knowledge. An older body might lose some speed, but it might hold a map of seasons. It might know where water remained after dry weeks, which plants appeared after rain, which route was safer, or which task should not be rushed. The fading of muscle may have changed the way a person entered the day, but it did not erase the human value carried in experience. This matters because modern people often fear muscle loss as if it proves the body has failed. But from a broader view, aging muscle reveals the price of being alive long enough for time to leave visible traces. The body that once built strength through walking, carrying, lifting, gripping, bending, and rising now shows the limits of maintenance. It shows that strength was never a permanent possession. It was always a relationship between tissue, food, nerve signals, movement, repair, and the surrounding world. When any part of that relationship changes, muscle changes with it. The ancient origin of the human body makes the lesson quieter and deeper. Our ancestors did not possess bodies of endless power. They possessed bodies able to survive enough, adapt enough, heal enough, and cooperate enough to continue. Their muscles were not outside hunger, injury, cold, childbirth, illness, or age. Their strength existed inside those pressures. It was real, but it was never absolute. In later life, the same truth becomes clearer. The body begins to choose caution more often. It saves energy. It avoids unnecessary risk. It may move less widely, not because life has no value, but because the cost of damage has grown. Muscle fading is one visible sign of that changing balance. It tells us that the human frame was built for motion, but not for endless youth. It was built to pass through time, not to defeat time completely. This does not make the body less remarkable. It may make it more remarkable. Every step taken across a lifetime, every rise from the ground, every carried child, every tool held, every meal gathered, every shelter prepared, every slow walk in old age belongs to the same human story. Muscle fades, but its fading reveals how much of life was carried by it before it grew quiet. The fading of muscle with age can be read as a loss, but it can also be read as a message. It tells us that strength was never only the ability to overpower something. Strength was the body's way of staying connected to the world. It was the pressure of the foot against earth, the grip of the hand around a tool, the lift of the arms around a child, the quiet bracing of the back under weight, the warmth made by movement when the air was cold, and the balance that kept a person upright when the ground was uneven. In this wider sense, muscle was not just force, it was participation. It allowed the body to enter the day, answer need, and remain useful among others. When age softens that strength, it does not erase the long history behind it. It reveals how much of being human once depended on moving through a real and resisting world. This is the educational value hidden inside an aging body. Muscle teaches that life is not carried by one system alone. The human body survived because many things work together: muscle, bone, nerve, breath, memory, food, care, skill, and cooperation. A strong person alone was still vulnerable. A weaker person within a group could still matter. A young body could carry weight, but an older mind could carry seasons, paths, warnings, stories, and judgment. Human survival was never only a contest of power. It was a shared arrangement between bodies of different ages, different abilities, and different forms of knowledge. Muscle mattered deeply, but it was not the only form of strength. That truth matters now because modern people often look at aging through a narrow lens. They see the thinner arm, the slower step, the harder rise from a chair, and they think only of decline. Decline is real, and it should not be denied, but it is not the whole meaning. The body that loses some muscle is also the body that has spent decades standing, walking, carrying, healing, working, helping, and enduring. Its fading strength is not proof that its past strength was worthless. It is proof that strength was used. In the deep past, every human body lived inside the same exchange. Movement kept muscle alive, but movement also wore the body. Food repaired tissue, but food was not always certain. A group protected the individual, but the individual still carried wounds, fatigue, and time. The body's power was always temporary, renewed again and again by use, rest, nourishment, and need. Age makes that temporary nature visible. It shows that the body is not a monument, it is a record. In its muscles are traces of what life repeatedly asked for. In their fading are traces of what time slowly asks back. This does not lead to a harsh conclusion. It leads to a quieter respect. The aging body is not simply a body failing to remain young. It is a body showing the cost of duration. To live longer is to give time more room, to speak through tissue. To grow older is to carry both the gifts and the limits of survival. The same muscles that once made childhood running possible, adult labor possible, care for others possible, and ordinary movement possible may later become softer, slower, and less certain. But they remain part of the same story. They remind us that the human body was shaped for movement, and that movement was never separate from community. A hand did not only grip for itself. It shared food, shaped tools, held children, supported another body, and carried objects that belonged to more than one person's survival. A leg did not only walk for itself. It followed others, returned to shelter, crossed distance for the group, and stood beside fires where no single body was enough. Muscle was a private tissue with a social meaning. When it fades, the lesson is not only biological, it is human. Strength begins in the body, but its deepest value has always been in what the body helps life become with others. When muscle fades with age, the body is not only losing force, it is returning a part of its history to time. The legs that once crossed ground without thought begin to ask for patience. The hands that once gripped, lifted, shaped, and carried begin to choose more carefully. The back that once held weight through long days begins to measure effort before accepting it. These changes can feel private, almost silent, but they belong to a much older human story. Every person carries a body descended from countless bodies that moved through difficult landscapes, raised children, gathered food, made tools, built warmth, and survived because movement remained possible long enough. Muscle was one of the ways life answered the world. It did not make humans invincible, it made them able to continue. Over a lifetime, that continuation leaves traces. Some traces are visible in skill, memory, and knowledge. Some are hidden in joints, tendons, nerves, scars, and tired tissue. Aging brings those hidden traces closer to the surface. The body begins to show that strength was never separate from cost. End quote. It was built through use, but use could also wear it down. It was repaired by food and rest, but repair could slow. It was guided by nerves and balance, but those signals could become less sharp. It was supported by community, but even care could not remove the passage of time from flesh. This is not a cruel message. It is an honest one. Human beings were not built as permanent machines. They were built as living organisms, always changing, always negotiating with the conditions around them. The same body that grows strong in youth must later decide how to spend its remaining energy, how to avoid damage, how to move safely, how to recover more slowly, and how to remain part of life even when force is not what it was. In the ancient world, this may have been understood not through science, but through daily observation. A person who had lived long enough to slow down might no longer carry the heaviest load or walk the farthest path, but could still hold memory, judgment, warning, teaching, and calm attention. The fading of muscle did not erase every form of value. It changed the form of contribution. That lesson still matters. Modern life often measures strength as performance, but deep human history suggests a wider meaning. Strength is also the ability to stay connected, to the ground, to other people, to repeated tasks, to memory, to care, and to the quiet rhythm of being alive. When muscle fades, the body may ask for a different kind of respect. Not the respect given only to power, speed, or youth, but the respect given to a life that has carried itself through years of gravity, weather, labor, worry, recovery, and change. This does not make the loss less real. A weaker step is still a weaker step. A harder rise is still a harder rise. A body that fears falling is not imagining its fear, but the meaning of that fading can be held more gently. It is not proof that the body has betrayed its purpose. It is proof that the body's purpose was never to remain unchanged. Its purpose was to live, adapt, spend energy, recover when it could, protect itself when it had to, and continue within the limits of time. Muscle fading with age teaches that every human life is carried by temporary strength. For a while, that strength feels ordinary. It lifts us from the ground, moves us through rooms, carries what we love, and lets us enter the world without thinking. Later, when it grows quieter, we begin to notice how much it had been doing all along. Perhaps that is the final value of this slow loss. It makes visible the hidden work of the body. It reminds us that the strength of our ancestors was never a myth of endless power, but a living relationship between need, movement, repair, and care. And when the body finally begins to give some of that strength back to time, what does it ask us to understand about the fragile gift of having moved through life at all?